Hello, beautiful and handsome world changers. Welcome back to the Nomad CEO Podcast. I'm Kenz, your host, and today I'm going to talk about health again. Now, those of you that don't know, I've been a personal trainer, nutrition coach for 14 years, I believe. Personal trainer for 14 years, and I've done nutrition for half that time, formally, more in-depth formal training. And I love it. I'm literally obsessed with it. It is a lifelong passion of mine. Like since I was a kid, especially a young teen, I was doing Jillian Michaels workouts at home. I was reading books on nutrition. I also battled it a lot, right? So I just wanted to understand it. I've been an athlete my whole life. I played 3 sports through high school, softball in college, just at small schools, so don't be too impressed. But I've loved movement. I love health. I'm obsessed. Health and travel are two of my biggest obsessions, alongside leadership and community and impact and all the stuff that we do. But anyways, I say all of that because once or twice a month, I plan to record some podcasts that are going to speak from a health perspective, from what I do in my quote unquote day job, which is my transformational health company, Elite Edge, and just share that from an educational standpoint, a knowledge standpoint. And a lot of you, this might just be reminders. Like I love being reminded of what I already know, because sometimes we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. And be reminded of, I got to keep doing that. Like a lot of times it's just like being reminded of the basics and going back to the fundamentals. And it's so easy when life, ebbs and flows and distractions come into play and seasons change to sometimes lose sight of that. And I've definitely lost sight of that at times. So anyways, today is going to be one of those conversations. And with that, I'm also going to pair in just a little bit of the nomadic fun and travel with it and what I found. And hopefully, if you are currently in a consistent routine when it comes to your activity and et cetera, this can help amplify that a little bit. Or if you've gotten out of that routine, or maybe you've never been in it, to inspire you to get back to or to get into it. So here we go. Today on the topic of health, I'm going to share one of my favorite things in life, okay? One of my favorite things about travel, one of my favorite things about health and movement and fitness, that quite frankly, I believe, unless you're in the fitness industry, is incredibly underrated. Like, most people that I talk to do not actually understand the value of this thing. It is that important. But when you start to do it and you start to feel it and you see the compounding effect and you see the benefit that it's giving you in your life, you're like, oh my gosh, like this was right in front of me. This is something I've been doing since I was a child. And yet I didn't understand the gravity of how impactful it was. So what am I talking about? I am talking about walking. Walking? What? Like that's what you're going to talk about, Mackenzie? Yes, it is. Okay. Now, a little backstory as to why I want to share a couple of recent things. I saw this online, probably Instagram somewhere, where all the truth drops. That's a joke. There's some good stuff on there. And it was just a funny thing. And I might be butchering this. You probably have seen it, but it's basically like I have two, I like to balance cheap things with expensive things or free things with expensive things. The free thing is walking, but the expensive thing is doing it in other countries. And I was like, ooh, holla at your girl. That is me. Okay. I love it. One of my favorite things in travel is just walking around a city, walking around a place. Like it's so funny. When I lived in the States and I had my own home, over time, actually, since I was in my mid-20s, I very intentionally would choose a place to live that was near a walking path or near either a walking path itself, ideally in nature, or that I could walk to the gym or the grocery store or both. Like I wanted to be able to walk to run my errands. I wanted walking to be part of my life because I started to understand the gravity of it. And this actually really hit me even as a health professional, right? Personally, when I worked at Boeing from 2018 to end of 2020, but it was like 3 years. It was like right around almost exactly 3 years. So whatever that and how that unfolded. And I was an exercise physiologist there. Now, at the location I was at was in Everett, Washington. And oh my gosh, you guys, Disneyland could fit in the size of this building. Like it was massive. And I had classes. I taught corrective exercise and I taught groups of people and I worked with people one-on-one. And I did that for 3 years. And it was weird if I didn't get 20,000 steps a day. Like your girl walked everywhere. And it's funny, like on my breaks, I would still walk around the entire campus because I was A body in motion stays in motion. A body at rest stays at rest. I'm not a good at physics, really. That was never my strength in school, but that is something that I do know. Okay. Unless a body at rest will stay at rest, unless an outside force comes to act upon it. And I would add to that from a fitness motivation context is that when an internal force decides to change, in my opinion, that's actually more powerful. So anyways, that was what my life looked like. And I was like, wow, I'm so hungry all the time, and I was still lifting and working out and very intense workouts, a lot of the time. And I mean, yeah, your girl would get down with the food and I was super shredded. Like it was fantastic. And so, but I was like, wow, walking, who would have known? Who would have known? Who would have known? New, hey, there's a new word. Anyway, so yeah. And then as time went on, I was like, this makes a lot of sense, actually. Like this is something, again, I know I even teach, but it's really deepened my understanding on a personal level. As time's gone since then, I'm like, I just need this to be part of my everyday life, because right after Boeing is when I started coaching online. So I got a walking pad, and I actually, before a walking pad, I would recommend this. No question. If you work from home, get a walking pad. Like find a way. Find a way. I'm telling you, it'll change your freaking life. Even if you did 30 minutes a day, even if you started with 10 minutes a day, right? Wherever you start small, but you will not want to not have it in your life. Okay. Double negative. But before I got a walking pad at home, I got one of these on Amazon. It's so funny. I laugh at myself now. I'm like, I'm just that girl. I'm like, yeah, whatever, you can think what you want. I'm just living through my values here. But it was kind of heavy, but I mean, not super heavy, but it was clunky. Basically, I would take it to the gym. It was a walking pad attachment, if you will, for my laptop at the gym on a treadmill. And it had this big metal bar and then this it was like a T, okay? It was like a cross if you're listening to this, not watching. And then it had an attachment where I could strap on my laptop, and I would just walk and work and walk. And I would probably do that for about an hour. And it's so funny. I think back to my clients then, because I would send Loom messages, which is a video sharing platform to show your screen and video at the same time. And I was huffing and puffing half the time. It's funny, but hey, I'm a coach, so I'm leading by example, right? So, and it just helped me so much. So I'd highly recommend that, because when I first started working remote and I was eating the same, I was like, this could get real bad real fast. Because not as active. So that's the first thing. Second thing is I was on a client call yesterday, and I don't always walk during my client calls, but I did on this one, depending on what we're talking about. And my client actually, he always walks on our calls, which I'm like, dude, do it. So he gets outside and he's moving. I mean, he's a big time entrepreneur, very successful. So it's like, hey, if you can habit stack this, I am all for it. And if I ever need you to be sitting still, I'll let you know. So anyways, I was walking with him, and he was saying, he's like, man, I'm surprised how much I'm really enjoying just walking. I'm like, yeah, man, isn't it cool? Like, what do you like about it? He went on to say, I feel better, I feel like I'm already trimming up a bit more, and just mentally, and he's like, I find myself, instead of going to other things saying oh, I need this to feel a certain way, he's like, I find myself craving a walk. And I was like, brother, that is fantastic. And then we went on to say, he's like, okay, we're talking about, I'm doing a training program for him. It's like, if you want to add in more cardio, XYZ. And this is where coaching comes into play. Okay. This is where personalization and someone knowing you and how you tick in your life is so important, because I was like, I won't say his name, but hey, where you're at right now, I would actually recommend, with your love for walking, because it's not quite a full non-negotiable habit yet. He hasn't been doing it long enough through different seasons of life. And he just moved across the country. He has a lot going on. So it's actually, he's building that habit more. And I was like, I think for this next phase, this next season, if you just continue to deepen your love for walking and start to see it as a lifelong habit for life. I'm talking highs, lows, ins, outs. It is part of your routine, regardless of whatever else is going on. Not saying that you're going to be perfect every day, but that it's something that you're like, this is who I am. I am a walker. Okay. I'm a big time walker. I was like, to me, that is going to have far more compounding effect than trying to get you to run right now or do any other type of cardio. And I'll say some physiological benefits of walking. So I'll dive into that. Walking, well, number one, it's it's one of the first things that we do in our life, right? So you see a baby start to walk, which is one of the most precious things. Like, wow, good. You're going to need that. That's a skill that you're going to need, Granted, I will say there obviously are exceptions when people say need a wheelchair and can't walk and they can still live an amazing, beautiful life. I've trained people like that. So please know my heart here. I'm just saying from a general perspective. But I was like, yeah, I think that, that's obviously a sign that's something important for us to do if we can. But so first and foremost, but secondly, walking it hardly burns any muscle. It's mainly burning body fat. It's very low impact. You can do it in short bursts. You can do it for long distances. You can do it at in your country, in another country. You can do it now in these days with, like I said, walking pads. You can do it while working. You can walk and talk, which I think is a great habit stack, or walk and listen to a podcast or music, create your own time. It's such a versatile thing, right? You can walk around living your life, walk around the mall. You can walk around, a resort. Like, walking is one of the easiest entries to activity and movement there is. And from a physiological perspective as well, there's something called your total daily expenditure. And that is how many calories your body burns in a day. Okay, so let's just break this down. The first component of that is something called BMR, or basal metabolic rate, or RMR, resting metabolic rate. What that means is if you were to lay in bed all day and do absolutely nothing, like I'm talking just sleeping, okay, or just laying there and you're just blinking your eyeballs, could you imagine? Your body is still burning calories, because your brain's still thinking, your heart's still pumping blood, like your organs are still working, you're still breathing. All of that takes energy, and calories equal energy. And so you're burning calories, just the rate at which you burn them is slower. Now, with that, what goes into BMR is your body weight, your height, your age, and your gender. And so if you work with a coach, they'll calculate that. There's different calculations to know how many calories that is, and then you can figure out your macronutrients from there. So BMR is the first component of your total daily expenditure. And then your workouts are another component. So your actual fitness, your actual exercise. So that could be going hitting weight training. That could be, if you view exercise as rock climbing, you name it. Okay. So that's obviously going to burn, depending on the length of workout and the intensity of the workout, anywhere from say 100 calories to 500 calories, give or take, depending on those factors. And I just say that as an example. Then a third component of how many calories that you burn in a day is something called NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis, okay, which is neat. And that is every type of movement that you do outside of a formal workout. So me talking with my hands, which I do a lot, very passionate, I'm burning calories right now. Like, my watch is counting steps, even though I'm not actually moving my feet, because my body is exerting energy to create this movement. So there's a lot of benefit to that like the level of NEAT that you can get in a day is significantly more than any level of exercise, bearing maybe 0.5% of the population, right? So it is powerful, and it is so important, just movement. And whenever we move, we start to release, we can call it our dose hormones, I say, for example. So four of the top hormones are dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. These hormones are multifaceted. They can do a lot of different things in the body, but a common denominator between all of them is impacting our mood, how we feel, right? Helps make us feel happy and joyful. So the more we move, the more those hormones are released. You're like, wow, I feel so good when I walk. Like, that's kind of weird, I was actually talking to my brother yesterday, and he's like, yeah, I really like physical labor. He's like, when I was renovating our condo, or they have a second home in a different city, and it's essentially a condo, but he's like, I felt so good. I'm like, yeah, brother, you're moving. You're moving your body, right? So you're releasing. That's how physiology works. Like, that's the calculation. Like, that's what happens. And so that's another component, and walking is neat. Now, for some people, when they're first starting, if they need to see their walking as their workout, in my opinion, that's not a bad place to start. Okay. Whatever mentally you need to latch onto to just gain some momentum. I'm talking from a behavioral standpoint here. I personally don't have any issue with that. Now, obviously, I really very much so believe in the value of a formal actual workout that ideally includes some resistance training, or can include maybe some high intensity interval training, or maybe some cardio, or whatever that might look like, and that's a whole nother conversation. So that's another factor. Another factor in our total daily expenditure I'll just touch on briefly is actually how many calories it takes to burn the food that we eat. So if we're eating, say, a simple sugar, simple carb like a sugar, it doesn't take as much energy to burn that, to break that down for the body, than it does, say, protein. So protein takes more energy to consume, to break down and utilize into amino acids. So we're going to burn more calories in the process. Now, it could be minuscule, but nonetheless, it still is a factor. So all that to be said, I want to get back to walking, and just so you understand our total daily expenditure. And then, another conversation is our totally daily intake, and balancing those two and what that looks like. But getting back to walking. So I'll just give you some quick metrics that you can use in your brain just to keep things simple. So whenever we walk about 2,000 steps, okay, that's roughly 1 mile. Now, obviously, depending on your height, depending on your pace, well, not just your pace, but, pace can play a factor for sure. But typically your height will depend on, give or take, how many actual steps that is, but it's a good framework. It's a good enough framework for you to have a general basis. So if you're like, what does 10,000 steps in a day actually look like? It's about 5 miles. So that can be easier for people to conceptualize if you use miles as a metric. Sorry, I don't know the meters. I know this from High Rocks. It's 8 kilometers and it's about 5 miles. It was like 5.26 or something, I want to say. You think by this point with how much I use kilometers, I would have that conversion down better, but I still use my phone to track that, to be frank. So anyways, getting back to it, from a miles perspective, that's about what it looks like. Now, this is where pace and the person that's walking, right, your body composition, how much weight you're carrying, yada, yada, if you're walking an incline or a decline or straight, this can change. But a general metric for you as well is whenever you get 2,000 steps, about a mile, you're going to burn roughly 100 calories. 100 calories. So when you get 10,000 steps, that's 500 calories. That's the same as a high intensity workout like Orange Theory for most people. That's crazy for an hour. And you can sprinkle that throughout your day. You don't have to do it all in one swoop. You can literally do, 2,000 steps here, 5,000 steps there, 500 there. Like it will stack up. And I will say this, whenever you're doing your workout, you are also getting steps at the same time if you're using a tracker. So don't overthink that. Just it is what it is. But from a general perspective, that's helpful. Now let's scale that. Okay. So let's take a 10K steps a day average times, so that's 500 calories a day times 7 days. It's about 3,500 calories. That is about a pound of body fat. So if all you changed was going from, let's say 0 steps, let's say 5,000 steps to 15,000, and you built up to that, you're giving yourself a pound a week of weight loss if that's a goal, just simply by movement, not even counting your workouts, technically, not even counting like a calorie deficit. Like it's just more movement. You're releasing more of those feel-good hormones, right? You're getting out in the sunshine, hopefully, and getting that vitamin D and fresh air, and your mental space is cleared up. Like there's so many benefits to it. And so, but you compound that over the course of a year. So a pound a week over 52 weeks, guys, that's 52 pounds, right? And assuming no other variables changed, but that's wild. That is wild. Okay. So if you have battled weight fluctuation where you've lost and gained, look at your steps. Look at how many steps you're actually getting, like track it. I'm a big believer, like this is a little bit of a pet peeve with me, and I'm someone that uses these excuses as well. Okay. So please know my heart, Coach Ken just coming out, is when people say, you don't understand, I have X, Y, or Z, and that's why I don't have my goal. It's like, let's look at the data. Okay. I'm a big fan of data. So when you were, say, 30 pounds lighter, what were your steps like? When I was at Boeing, I was getting 20 plus 25,000 steps a day. When I started working remote as a coach and doing online check-ins and online programs, I could easily get 5,000 steps a day. Guys, that is significant. That is significant. And so thankfully I caught on pretty quick. I was like, whoa, I gotta be active still. I didn't even realize it until I didn't do it. But a lot of people, myself included before that, didn't recognize what was happening. So that's one factor, let alone, I'm a firm believer in data and testing, not guessing. And so just give that to yourself. If you've been saying that about, oh, you don't understand, I'm not where I want to be, blah, blah, blah. Well, start looking how active are you, right? How many calories are you actually consuming? Have you tracked your food? I think that is something that everyone should do. I personally believe tracking your food should be a class in school. Now, caveat of me as a student, that's actually how I got into, no, I shouldn't say got into, that's what, I end up using that in an unhealthy way, okay, when I start tracking my calories. So I use it to an extreme. So I know that there's caveats to this. I was the example of that, okay, of eating 2,000 calories a day and burning 3,000 and thinking that was okay as a college athlete, okay, not good. With that being said, as I healed my internal, it wasn't tracking, okay, it was what was going on inside of me. And I could blame tracking all day long, but it was my own wounds. It was my own healing that I needed to go through. And I used tracking as an excuse to saying, I can't do that, or tracking hurts me. Tracking is amoral. It doesn't freaking care. It's something that you do. It's how we think about it. It's how we feel about it. And it's really how we feel about ourselves. And so once I worked through that, then I was like, tracking is a tool, right? It's not a weapon. It's a tool. But I'll use it as a weapon because it's me who holds it. So that's just something, again, I've had to work through, and I would just say, I don't force my clients to track or say that you have to all the time. Like I'd like to think I'm very intuitive with that, of like, what do you need? What can you handle? I'm just speaking from an objective standpoint of like, look at the data if that's something that you've talked about. So anyways, that was my soapbox, and I'm coming off it. A few more things with walking that's so powerful. I'll just say from a foreign country, perspective is like, I don't rent a car. Typically, I actually don't think I've ever rented a car overseas outside of when I traveled with people. Yeah, never done by myself. Because number one, it's just kind of a hassle for me. And number two, in my mind, it's a hassle. Okay. I just don't want to go there. To me, it's simpler just to like pay for an Uber or a taxi or, Grab or whatever, wherever I'm at in the country or the world, excuse me, or to walk. So I'm like, I don't want to take away my walking excitement. Like I formed my life and where I lived based off that. So I get excited to go walk outside so that I had the ability to walk inside and get steps. But when I travel, it is often, not every day, but often in the week that I will walk an hour one way somewhere. And it's also very common that I'll walk that way back. Occasionally, depending on the scenario, I might get a ride back or a ride there and walk back. But I am typically like, if it says, oh, it's a 59-minute walk, I'm like, sick. This is awesome. I'm going to plug in a podcast. I'm going to walk it out in sunshine. I'm going to observe the environment. This is time for your girl. Okay. It is so like, and if you're in a place too, that's really beautiful and you want to see it, it's powerful, right? A lot of people talk about gaining weight when they travel. And it's funny. I have gained weight when I've traveled. Okay. Like I've traveled a lot and I've battled my weight. So those two have just gone together at times. With it being said, fortunately, being in the profession that I'm in and just staying dedicated and consistent to my own health, regardless of that profession, I've gotten really good at understanding what does it take to not only maintain my weight, but even lose weight when I'm traveling. And walking is one of the biggest arrows in my quiver in doing that. And so, man, it's just one of the best ways to see a place. And, when you're driving somewhere, like you can take stuff in, but you're going by so fast. When you're walking, you can actually, quote unquote, smell the roses more, or, not just quote unquote, literally, if there's roses, hello, that's exciting. But you meet people, you see things, maybe you find places you want to go try to eat or grab coffee. Like there's so much beautiful benefit to just walking. So I could talk about this all day long, but I just want to say, like, if you are a full-time traveler or if you travel, like eliminate the excuse from your life that you'll be unhealthy, because if you just walk, that alone is going to help so much. And if you're a CEO, if you run a company, if you lead people, like if you give that time to yourself, or take a call, take a meeting and walk, right? Especially in the world of Zoom, and depending on the meeting, because I have meetings where I want people to be still and not moving around everywhere and have crazy backgrounds and all that stuff. But a lot of times, especially from a health context, I encourage it. If you know that you can stay in tune and you're present and your camera's on and you're engaged, more power to you, baby. Like, I facilitate the meetings when there's more people, so I'm not going to walk, but one-on-one sometimes I do, as I said, but I'm all for it. Like habit stack the heck out of that bad boy. But I would just say, if you're leading people, if you're doing something like that, do not underestimate the power of simple movement and walking. Okay. Because you will be a better leader. You'll be a better business owner. You will think clearer. I personally, part of the power in walking is that I personally pray. So when I do my morning walks, it's my prayer walk. I don't take my phone. I leave it. I have an app called Opal that blocks my social media. It also blocks my email and my text messages until 9 a.m. every morning. So I typically wake up around 7. Well, I would say 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. typically, sometimes 8, with travel and time zone changes that can happen, but I don't check my text messages. Like that is me time. And when I go out and walk, like I am present. It starts my day. I get sunlight, I wake up, reset the circadian rhythm. So many benefits to it, but I know, and I've done this for long enough. When I don't do that, I'm not as good of a leader. I don't think as clear. I'm not as good of an entrepreneur. It's crazy. That one habit, you guys. And I'm not talking about spreadsheets of your business. This is on the spreadsheet of your body. Your body is your first business. And so we have to treat it as such. And I would just say, keep metrics of that. Be aware of that. How many steps do you average a week? How many steps do you average a day? What were your steps like the last 3 months? Okay. Go back and look at that data. And if you don't have that, I think one of the top investment tools that you can have in your health is buying a step tracker. Okay. Now, one thing on this, I will go through seasons of taking it off just because I just don't want to, I think that's healthy to have breaks from things at times. But for the most part, 80% of my life since getting a watch, I'm wearing it because I want to stay aware, right? Like I'm not so good that I couldn't fall off these habits I just shared with you when that happened. And one of the many times, I need this stuff too. So use tools like that to keep your life simple and do the tracking for you. And you just have to be aware of the data. So anyways, again, I could talk about this all day long, but hopefully this helps. Hopefully this sparks your excitement like I have when it comes to walking. And I'm actually going to go for a walk right now. So anyways, team, hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Much love, and I'll see you next time.